Hi there, I'm Michelle the Painter from Berkshire Paint and Sip, and this is Paint and Sip at Home. Alright, so today I'm going to be painting Perfect Pumpkin Pick. Say that 3 times fast. I'm going to be sipping on some pumpkin spice coffee. And if you enjoy this process, I do hope that you like and subscribe to my channel and that you also check out my Patreon page where you're going to find additional painting perks. So let's get painting and let's get sipping. Alright, so for my materials today, I'm going to be using a stretched and primed 16 by 20 inch canvas. If you're painting along with me, you can certainly switch up the size, but that's what I'll be using. I'm going to be using acrylic paint today. My colors are titanium white, cobalt blue, fire red, Mars black, chrome orange, burnt umber, which I like to call brown, and raw sienna, which I will call yellow. And those are the colors I'll be using. You can certainly switch up yours if you'd like to. For my tools today, I have a standard number 2 pencil that I'll be using for some drawing. And then I have 3 brushes from my personal brush line, which is Michelle the Painter brushes. I have a 3/4 inch wide flat bristle brush. I have a number 10 round synthetic brush, and I have a number 5 round synthetic brush. And I will refer to these as small, medium, and large as we go through the painting process. And of course, you can switch those up as well if you'd like to. If you're painting along with me, you'll probably want to have a cup of water for washing your brushes, as well as a paper towel for drying your brushes. And down below this video, in the video description, I will be providing you with a couple of additional resources that can help you throughout your painting process. One of them is a link where you could purchase the same exact paint kit that I'm using, from the same size and type of canvas to the same type of paints and brushes and all the good stuff in between. So that's there for you. There's also a link where you can download a free image of the final painting. So you can print that and use it as visual reference as you go through the painting process. And there's also written step-by-step instructions down there for you as well. And that's all we're going to need today. Alright, so what we're going to do for the first step is we're going to draw an outline for our landscape and our wagon and our pumpkin. I'm going to be using my pencil. You could certainly use any drawing utensil that you'd like. We're just using a drawing utensil so we can kind of map out some of the basic shapes for this painting, and we'll be able to color them in during the painting process. I'm going to start by giving you markers. We'll connect those markers and we'll just create these nice big block sections to color in. So I'm going to start by separating my sky from my land. I'm going to come down about 1/3 of the way down my canvas. So to know where that is, if you kind of eyeball your halfway point, mine is about here, and then your quarter way point about halfway between here and here, it's somewhere in between those two. So right about here is about 1/3 of the way, and then you can do the same exercise on the other side. So this is about halfway, this is about 1/4 way, somewhere in between. Then I'm going to connect these two. I don't need this to be a super straight line. I actually kind of want it to be a little organic. This is just a farm field, so I don't need it to be perfectly straight. So that'll be my land line. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw the outline for my wagon. I've got this wagon at a really strong perspective, as if the viewer's kind of standing right behind the wagon. So we're going to see the wagon really big down at the bottom right, and it's going to get smaller and smaller as it goes up towards the top left. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to find myself about the center of my canvas, left to right, top to bottom. For me, that's about right here. I'm going to go up almost an inch, maybe about 3/4 of an inch to an inch, and then over to the right about an inch. That'll be my first marker. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to my center on that same kind of height, and then I'm going to go about halfway between that and the left side of my canvas. So right about here. So I'm about 1/4 of the way over towards the left hand side. I can connect these two with a horizontal line. Then what I'm going to do on the right hand side of my canvas, I'm going to come up about a quarter of the way. So if this is about halfway, maybe it's a little bit higher than a quarter. This is about a quarter. I'm just a little bit higher than that. So somewhere in this vicinity. And then I'm going to connect here to here with a diagonal line. Doesn't have to be perfect. This is just going to give us a great starting place to color in. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to come down from here about 1.5 inches, make myself a marker in through here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back to the center point of my canvas, and I'm going to come straight down till I'm at about the same height as here. So right about here. Now I can connect here to here with a horizontal line, and I can connect here to here with a diagonal line. Something like that. So we've created some great dimension or perspective on that. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to come directly below this marker, about 1.5 inches, right about here. And then I'm going to come straight down from here to the bottom of my canvas, and then to the left about 1 inch, 3/4 of an inch to 1 inch, somewhere in through here. And then I'm going to connect here to here with a vertical line, and then here to here with a slightly diagonal line. So somewhere like this. So at this point, this should be to the right of here and to the left a little bit of here. That'll give you good perspective on there. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a freehand, really huge pumpkin sitting in my in my wagon. So I'm going to come over to the right of here, maybe about 3.5 inches, somewhere in through here. I'm going to come down the side of here, about halfway between here and here, somewhere in through here. And I'm going to connect these with a really big kind of oval type of a shape. Yours doesn't have to be the same as mine. I'm going to have it kind of crossing over my horizon line like this, and then I'm going to just kind of give a whole bunch of little bumps on that top to represent the shape of my pumpkin, and then just bring it down here. The next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to lightly erase these two lines in through here. This is not necessary to erase these two lines, but if you do have transparent paint, sometimes erasing these pencil marks will help your painting process a little bit easier, for one, and for two, it'll help you to not get confused during the painting process. And that's all I'm going to be doing for my outline. We'll put the stem on and the wheels on and the kid. We'll do all that in later steps, but this is all I'm going to do for this outline. We'll be using our large brush for the next step. So once you've got this done, you can put your pencil away, take out your large brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to be painting our sky and the base coat for our ground. I'm going to be using my large bristle brush. The colors I'm going to use are blue, white, yellow, and brown. And what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be creating a nice light airy sky that's a little bit darker at the top, a little bit lighter at the bottom, with maybe some wispy kind of clouds floating by. And then on the ground, I'm going to be creating a nice kind of autumn dry grass type of a look. So I'll be using a dotting or stippling type of technique with my yellow and my brown. We'll come back and add additional texture onto the ground, but this will just be the first layer. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with about equal parts of blue and white on my brush. You can even just put a little bit in each corner, something like that. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to start up in the top right hand corner of my sky using a circular type of technique. When I'm doing these type of skies that I'd like to have the illusion of clouds on one shot, what I'll do is I will use this circular type of motion, put my darker sections, so to speak, in first, and then I can add the lighter areas around it. So now, without washing my brush, I just picked up a little bit more white, and I can get almost the illusion of this nice cloud floating by in between those dark spots of the sky. I just picked up a little bit more white in order to finish up this area in through here, and you can certainly overlap if you want to, but I think the trick is to just not overpaint it. So as I'm going through this process, if I want this to look like a cloud next to that, I'm not going to overblend it and make it look like one solid color. But I do like to have my clouds nice and fluffy and soft looking, so I like them to have softer edges to them, but I'm not gonna, if I want the cloud appearance, I'm not gonna overblend it where it's one solid color. And then I'm just picking up more white as I'm coming down towards the horizon line. And if it goes too white on you, you can certainly pick up a tiny bit more of the blue paint if you want to. Not entirely necessary, but if you wanted to, like I feel like I want this side to be a little bit bluer, so I'm gonna pick up a tiny bit more blue with the white on my brush, just so I can have maybe a little bit, maybe darker over here and lighter over here. But again, that's gonna be a preference on your part. I am going to be bumping into my pencil mark for the horizon line or even my pumpkin. So that way, when I go to paint in those objects, I will not have a visible gap between the sky and, say, the pumpkin. Same thing in through here. You can bump right into that pencil. Even if it bleeds into your paint a little bit, that's fine. That'll just make it look like it's got some, you know, a tinge to it. It'll look nice and natural. So that's what I'm going to do for my sky. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to wash and dry my brush, and I'm going to do my base coat for my ground. So I want my ground to be a little bit darker down at the bottom and lighter as it gets towards the top. So I'm going to start with, again, about equal parts of brown and my yellow on my brush, maybe a little bit more than I did on the sky because I have a kind of a more textured effect I'm going for here. And what I'm going to do is I'm just dotting it. I'm going to be bringing it right to and touching my wagon. I don't want it to look, again, like there's any unpainted canvas, so I make sure that I go all the way right up to my my wagon. On this one, I know that I'm going to be doing a second layer on my grass, so if I do overblend it and it becomes more of a solid color, I'm all right with that because I know, again, that I'm going to be doing a second coat on it where I'll be able to add that extra textural element. I am watching this side of the land because I want them to kind of be in a similar color pattern. So as I am doing this side, when I go over to this side, I want it to kind of be the same color. So I don't want it to be too much lighter or too much darker. In a second, I'm going to start picking up more yellow on my brush so it gets lighter and lighter. So right about now, I'm thinking I'm going to start picking up just yellow on my dirty brush. So what'll happen is that brown will start to work its way off and my grass will appear to be a little bit lighter and lighter as it's going up towards my horizon line. And again, just bumping right into the edge of my wagon so it looks like we've got some, like we'll be able to color right over it when we go to do the base coat of these guys. And same thing with my pumpkin, just bumping right into the edge of that. And then I'm going to do the same thing in through here. When I get to the tippy top of my land, I'm going to start adding a touch of white on my brush with the yellow. So I'm just about there right now. And you can see some of the brown from my bristles is releasing itself, which works out just fine. So now I'm picking up about equal parts of yellow and white. And I'm just going to give myself this nice softness up at the top. And again, I'm going to do a second layer, so I'm not concerned about this being entirely perfect right now, but I do want to get this my pencil mark. I want to cover up my pencil mark on that horizon line. If you can still see little evidence of it, that's okay, but you want to start the process of covering it now so you don't have that, so it doesn't show through later. And then I'm just going to bring this right in through here. And then once you've got this done, again, don't go for perfection right now. We're going to have another layer on top of it. Once you've got this done, I'm going to put this large brush away. I'm going to be using my medium brush for the next step. So you can put this away, take out your medium brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to be painting the base coat for our pumpkin and our wagon. I'm going to be using my medium brush. The colors that I'm going to use are black, orange, red, and brown. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to be painting the inside portion of my wagon with black. We'll do the exterior with some red and brown, and then we're going to be doing the pumpkin with orange and brown. Again, this is going to be the base coat, so we're not going for anything too fancy. What I'm going to first do is load my brush with black paint, and I'm going to paint the inside of my wagon with black paint. Nothing fancy here. I'm just coloring in these sections with black paint. And as I'm going through this process, I know that I'm going to be doing other details around it. So again, if it doesn't end up perfect with perfect edges or anything like that, that's okay. That's part of the process. As you go through these painting steps, knowing what stage you're at and when it's needed to have all of those fine-tuned details and when it's not is a great way to kind of expedite the process. Because if you're in a stage that is not requiring the fine-tuned detail, then you don't need to put it in. You don't need to waste your time getting everything perfect when you're going to be, in essence, painting over it with future details. I know I'm going to have a little red detail at the edge of here, so I know I don't need that edge perfect. So knowing those things kind of helps you expedite your painting process. I do want to straighten this out a little bit. There we go. So I'm going to wash and dry my brush. I'm going to paint the base coat of my pumpkin now. So I definitely want to have some good dimension on my pumpkin. I know I'm going to have my stem coming out somewhere in through here, and I'm also going to have kind of a shadowy area down at the bottom of my pumpkin. So I'm going to put some brown paint up in through here and down at the bottom, and then I'll get it to blend into my orange. I'm going to start with brown paint on my brush. I want my stem is going to be kind of coming out from here, and knowing what I know about pumpkins, they have kind of these bumps in them. So I'm going to just pull this dark area out in kind of a curved manner in maybe these little grooves of the pumpkin. So something like that will start that process, and then I'm going to do a similar process down at the bottom, where I know my whole pumpkin is going to be hidden inside my my wagon. So I'm just kind of going to do this darker area down at the bottom, and then kind of pull up so a few almost grooves in that pumpkin. I know the bottom of my pumpkin in essence is inside, so I don't want these grooves to necessarily look like they stop here. I'll be putting some orange in through here, but I definitely want there to be some darkness at the bottom of my pumpkin, so that's why I'm starting it like this. And then I'm going to pick up orange without washing my brush. I'm picking up orange paint, and I'm going to start this full coat on the pumpkin. Again, I know I'm going to have another layer to this, so I'm allowing for almost kind of a messy look to it right now, where these colors are blending together, providing me with some good, almost a textural type of effect to the skin of the pumpkin. You could approach a pumpkin in many different ways to get it to look realistic, but I'm feeling like I'm just going to have this one nice, and it's going to have some good grooves in it. We're going to have some vibrancy towards the top when we go to put the highlights on, but right now just kind of getting this nice base coat on here and utilizing the darker tones from the brown, especially on this right hand side, because I know that my light source is high up in the sky, and I'm gonna have it kind of shining on the pumpkin on the left side. So I can use these darker tones over here on the right side as my base. And I'm just gonna bring this up towards the top, making sure I've got a nice full coverage. If you have streakiness to it at this stage, it's just part of the building process. If you can still see some of your canvas through this at this point, it's all right, because again, this is just that base coat. Just making sure that I've got all these little areas up in through here, and my orange is transparent or see-through, so you can see that brown underneath it, which is great, because it's going to provide me with, again, those shadowy type of effects that I'm longing for by the time I'm done with this. And then just giving myself kind of a clean line over there. Then I'm going to wash and dry my brush, and I'm going to do the base coat for my wagon with red and brown. So I'm loading my brush with about equal parts of red and brown. I'm going to be doing this back side with both those colors, red and brown, and then I'm going to do this left side with just red, because I want this left side to be a little bit brighter than the back side of it, to give it, again, a little bit more dimension. And again, we're going to be doing multiple coats on this, so I don't have to worry about it being perfect. My corner of my wagon is right about in through here, So that's where I'm gonna stop. I'll put this left to right brush stroke in through here. And then when I go to do the side, I will be doing that in a diagonal brush stroke. These wagons can be any color you want. If you want yours to be purple, make it purple. If you want yours to look like wood, make it look like wood. It's going to be a preference on your part. There's just tons of country wagons to use as you know, references. I thought the traditional red wagon would be super cute for this, so that's where I'm headed. And then on this side, I'm just going to use red on my brush. I didn't wash my brush, so there'll probably be some little evidence of the brown. I'm just going to kind of slow down right here in this corner so I can keep the shape that I want, and then just going to do this diagonal line. And I am consciously kind of crossing over my grass, so again, that way I don't have any little vacant places between my grass and my wagon. And if you don't see the evidence of the, you know, your directional brush stroke on this step, it's all right, because this could be a nice smooth coat to your wagon. It doesn't have to be kind of streaky like I'm making mine, or having a little bit of painterly texture like I'm having mine look like. You can certainly make yours just one solid color. That works too. I need to bring this up just a little bit higher, and it's crossing over the black right now, and you can see the black through it, which is fine in this stage. We're going to be doing a little bit of a highlight on it later, so that works here. And then I'm just going to put a little red edge around the corner, around the edges of the wagon in through here, and just bring in my brush. And again, I'm overlapping it into the ground and into the wagon to make sure that I have full coverage, and doing the same thing over here. Let me just get my brush a little bit more in control here. There we go. And then just bringing this over in through here. And then once you have this step done, we're going to be using our large brush for the next step. So you can put this medium brush away, take out your large brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to finish our grass. I'm going to be using a large bristle brush. The colors that I'm going to use are white, yellow, and brown. And what I'm going to do is I might use a little black too, but maybe not sure on that yet. What I'm going to do is I really want to give it the grass texture right now. So I'm going to be using the tip of my brush to give myself these little speckly marks up at the top, which is going to show that maybe there's some sunshine just sparkling on the top of the pieces of grass. I do want the whole grassy area to have these little twinkles of highlights, but I want the grass to look farther away at the top and closer down here. So at the top, I'm going to be using a dotting technique, stippling technique, and as I get closer to the viewer, which is the bottom of the canvas, I'm going to start changing my brush stroke from a dotting technique to more of a pulling technique. So the grass is going to look like it's getting closer and closer to the viewer, and we're going to be seeing the more individual, longer strands of it. So it's in essence kind of coming into focus. I'm going to start at the top, work my way down, and again, I'm going to attempt to get the left and the right side similar as I'm coming down. I'm going to start with a teeny tiny bit of white paint just at the end of my brush. And to know, or to give it a little safety measure, you can always tap it off on your paper towel. I'm going to just kind of tap up in through here, give myself these little tiny white speckly marks. If you bump into your wagon along the way, it's okay. Again, we're not done with the wagon yet. That we're just working on those, we'll be working on the little details. I build these paintings in these specific orders so we can allow for bumping in of things and allow for a time to make corrections later. And again, I'm going to do the same thing with my pumpkin. I'm going to just kind of paint right over those edges so it won't look like I'm working around my pumpkin. It'll look like all of this stuff is behind. You could approach it in a different way by painting the whole ground and then putting these objects on top. I just knew that they were going to be taking up a really large area, so I wanted to not have to overwork the painting. Now what I'm doing is I'm picking up a little bit of my yellow and white. So now as I'm getting down closer to the viewer, I don't need it to be as sparkly white as the stuff up top. So I'm dulling it down a little bit by adding that yellow into the equation. And in a minute, I'm going to start changing my brush stroke a little bit. So that's looking pretty good. So now I feel like I'm going to start getting into the range of the viewer seeing maybe a little bit of that brush stroke, so, or the texture more of the grass. So I'm going to start almost like tapping it up in an upward direction, something like this. And this is going to make that grass look like it's coming closer and closer to the viewer. And again, I try and do it gradually so it doesn't look like, you know, we have one section of dots and one section of vertical little marks. So it's kind of a delicate dance between the two. Maybe if it's looking too separate of a texture for you, you can overlap your dots with your vertical marks. That's going to be what, you know, wherever it's looking the most natural for you. And, you know, you don't necessarily have to do rows of it like I'm doing. You can certainly do almost like little clumps. That'll indicate that maybe one area is a little bit brighter than the other. I'm picking up more yellow and white just to kind of go a little bit more lengthy in through here. And again, hardly any paint on my brush. I don't need to do much because of the darkness that's underneath. I'm going to start picking up more yellow now that I'm down in this darker region. I still have a little bit of the white on my brush, but I know that I can get away with picking up a little bit more yellow with it. And as I'm coming down here, it's getting closer and closer. I don't always just want to pull it straight up. You can, with these longer ones, start pulling it in, you know, more of a curved direction, and that'll make it look a little bit more natural. And if you end up going too much, I'm going to move my canvas a little bit here so I can get to the bottom. If you end up doing a little bit too much, you can always come back with some of the brown or maybe even a little bit of black if you find that maybe you can't see the dimension in that grass. You can certainly come back with some of the darker tones, which I might do in a second, just so we can get a little bit more dimension on in through here. I'm going to pick up a tiny bit of brown right now and yellow on my brush, just a itty bitty bit on the tip of my brush to get maybe a little bit of these darker tones. Actually, I'm going to wash and dry my brush right now because I'm not getting the texture I want. So I washed and dried my brush. I'm going to pick up a tiny bit of black and brown. And when I say tiny bit, I mean just an itty bitty bit on my brush. I want it to have a little bit more texture in through here. So, and it's not giving me as much as I want. So I just need to add a little bit more contrast in here, which is where the darkness is coming into play. So whenever you're going through something like this, if you're not seeing the results that you want, it could mean because you don't have enough contrast in there. And that's what I was feeling I wasn't getting, was enough contrast. So I needed to add a little bit more darkness in through there. Now I'm going to wash that black off of my brush and pick up back up a little bit of the white and yellow, just making sure my brush is pretty dry. And then I'm going to pick up a little bit of that white and yellow back on my brush. And now I should be able to get some good little pieces. And you could also use your smaller brush if you wanted to have more individual pieces, but I think I'm gonna, there we go. We got it now. But sometimes it just takes that little bit of playing with it in order to get the appearance that you're looking for. I definitely wanted to see some longer pieces of grass here, and I was losing it. So with the colors being too similar. So that gave me the look I was going for. And then I'm thinking that that's looking pretty good. So we're going to be using our medium brush for the next step. So once you've got this done, fiddle with it all you want, and then you can put this large brush away, take out your medium brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to paint the base coat to the stem, and we're going to finish our shadows on the pumpkin. I'm going to be using my medium brush. The colors I'm going to use are black, brown, and orange. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my stem in place with some brown and black, and then I'm just going to kind of clean up the bottom portion of my pumpkin as it's sinking into or sitting or resting in my wagon. I'm going to start with my stem with some brown paint on my brush. I'm going to have my stem coming out of my center in through here and kind of snaking up around in this area. You could, I mean, the stems can be in all different kinds of shapes and sizes and even colors for that matter. So feel free to use your imagination as you are creating the stem to your pumpkin. Some of them are short, some of them are long. They can, again, come in all kinds of different shapes and sizes. I'm just choosing to put mine in kind of a whimsical type of a shape with a little bit of a bump on the end of it. But again, you could really make yours into whatever that you'd want. So once I've got that shape in there with brown, I'm just going to pick up a tiny bit of black paint on my dirty brush. I'm having my shadowy side kind of on the right side of it. So I'm just going to pull up almost this little twisted type of look to it. So I'm just going to put a little bit of darkness in through here, and then I'm just kind of pulling up a couple of little streaks up in between there with a tiny bit of black, maybe on this underside in through here, so it gives it kind of a twisted type of a look. We'll be doing the highlights in a little bit, which will make this look even more twisted, but this will just kind of start it for us. Then what I'm going to do with the remnants on my brush with that black and brown, I want to clean up the bottom edge of my pumpkin so it really looks like it is sunken or, you know, kind of nestled into the wagon. So I make sure that this corner is pretty dark right in through here, making sure that I don't have any unpainted gaps between my pumpkin and my wagon. And then I'm just going to kind of pull up these dark areas where I kind of already have the dark areas formed already. So just kind of pulling this up. And again, I'm trying to make it look like the pumpkin doesn't end here. I want it to kind of look like it ends further on down in the wagon. So I don't want all of these to come to a close right here, but I definitely want it to look like they're shadowed down on this side. So I'm just going to kind of bring this shadow up the side of the pumpkin, but also within those grooves that we've already kind of identified. So again, just a little bit of black and brown is on my brush right now to get this to fully look like it's shadowed down here at the bottom. And in a second, right now I'm gonna wash and dry my brush, and I'm picking up some orange, and I'm just gonna make sure that this blends as much as I want it to. So I washed and dried my brush and just picked up some orange. So you can use this orange to, even though it's transparent, which means you can see through it, you can use it to just help blend those shadows into the neighboring area. And I'm also kind of making sure that I'm bringing it down so it looks like it's, you know, not ending right here. So the pumpkin looks like it's ending inside the wagon as opposed to just right at the top of it. And then I'm just continuing with this orange, almost like a second layer on top of those shadows in order to make them look nice and realistic. And then once you've got this done, we are going to be using this same brush for the next step. So you can just wash it and dry it. I can never stop. That looks pretty good to me. So wash it and dry it and get ready. All right, so what we're gonna do for the next step is we're gonna finish our pumpkin. This will be finishing the stem and the highlight areas on the pumpkin to give it a lot of shape and form. I'm gonna be using my medium brush. The colors that I'm gonna use are white, yellow, orange, and brown. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna be adding a real big highlight on this area of the pumpkin, especially on the left-hand side, in order to, one, tell us where the light is. I'm having my light kind of up in the sky, but to the left a little bit. So I'm going to have a lot of brightness here. I'm going to have some brightness on the curve of the pumpkin as it comes around here. So that's where my highlight is, my main highlight is going to be right in through here. So it tells the viewer that the pumpkin is coming out to the viewer. It'll pop out to the viewer. On my stem, I'm not going to do a whole heck of a lot. I'll use my brown and a little bit of white just to give myself more texture on this little swirly, spinny stem, and a little bit of highlight on it. I'm going to be using the yellow to counteract if I go orange and just orange and white, that may make it a little bit too soft looking. So the yellow will help to add a little bit of vibrancy. So I'm going to start with just white paint on my brush, and I'm going to put in my kind of like a base coat where I want these really bright highlight to go. So I have just white paint on my brush right now. And what this is going to do is it's going to allow for the areas that I want to be really vibrant and kind of in your face orange. This white is going to act as a great base for that to happen. So it will, in essence, kind of take the orange that I already have, and if I put orange on top of it, because it's such a white base, it'll make it nice and vibrant. And I'm just going to kind of put this brightness in through this curved area that I want to be really light, and I'm just going to kind of pull it down almost into these groove type of sections. As I come over towards the right hand side, I'm going to start, right now I'm kind of curving this to the left. Right about here, I'm going to start curving it to the right. So that's going to give you the illusion of this kind of bumping out to the viewer in through here. And you can see I'm not using any firm edges to my color. I'm just kind of pulling it down so I have these like soft edges as it's coming down that pumpkin. So it can be pretty firm up in through here, and then I can just kind of pull it down like this. Again, this is, I'm going to add some other color on top of this. This is just giving me the the base for the brightness that I'm going to want to have in a second. You can even just kind of rub it in. I'm leaving some little darker areas in between those grooves, so those will look like they kind of sink in a little bit. I'll put a tiny bit of this over on this edge over in through here. I don't need much on this edge because I feel like it would kind of dip in a little bit, but we might see it on the top. I'm going to take a little bit of this white, and I'm going to now, while this is kind of settling, I'm going to give myself some highlights on this little stem. I'm going to pick up some brown now without washing my brush. I have white and brown on my brush, and I'm just going to bring this down into these little grooves, almost in between the black lines that I had put, and this is just giving me some nice, believable texture to my stem. Maybe a little highlight on there, and you can fiddle with that all you want, but I'm putting the majority of the highlight over here on the left hand side with the white and a little bit of the brown. So that looks pretty good. Making sure I can't see through my stem. I don't want to be able to see that where the pumpkin shows behind it there. Now I'm going to wash and dry my brush, and I'm going to put yellow paint on my brush. So I've got yellow going on my brush right now, and I'm going to kind of overlap some of this white with a little bit of orange in through here. So this, again, I'm going for a real lightness on this left-hand side. So I'm using this yellow to provide that bright layer to it. And again, I'm concentrating on my brightness being really kind of in through here. So again, this is just yellow. So I'm overlapping these colors because for me, as I'm going through these kind of process, when I have an object that has many different color variations, like a pumpkin's not, in my visual opinion, is not always just orange. It's got, you know, depending on the type of, you know, seed with that is used, depending on a lot of different factors. They can be all different kinds of colors. They can even be brown. They can be, you know, it's a type of a gourd, which can be any kind of color that you want. So I like to layer these colors in order to give me those different variations in tones. So I'm just kind of layering the yellow on top of that white, and now I'm going to pick up some orange, and I'm going to make sure that these bottom sections kind of blend in where that orange is, or where the lightness is. So my orange is kind of my connector color at this point, and I'm keeping some darker areas in the middle where I've got kind of these darker shadows coming up from the bottom. And you can continue to layer it and layer it and layer it until you feel that you've got that dimension that is visually appealing to you. As I'm going through this process, I'm watching my sides, making sure that I've got it fully painted over that back area. I'm making sure that I've got it as orange as I want it to be. Maybe you want yours to be even more orange than mine, so you can use even more. Maybe the orange is, you know, a different shade for you, so you can counter it with a little bit of white or yellow, whatever works for you. I just picked up a little bit more white on my brush right now to get this highlight to pop out even more over here on this left hand side. And then this is my process for doing these highlights or to giving the shape on the pumpkin. So what I would do at this point, now that I know where I want my highlights to go, I know what kind of shape I want my pumpkin to be in, I would at this point probably let it rest for a minute, let it dry, see if I'm getting the areas to pop out as much as I want. Right now I'm kind of flipping back and forth between white, yellow, and orange. I just wanted to pick up some orange here and I didn't have it on my brush. So between the white, yellow, and orange, now that I've kind of established where that lightest area is, I can sit here and just kind of fiddle and look at it from a distance and say, is that area bright enough? Do I have enough brightness up in through here? Because maybe this, I can see maybe there's a little bit more brightness up in through here because maybe my light is shining down on this bump right at the top. So if you feel like more brightness up here would make sense, then by all means put it in there. So you just kind of keep fiddling back and forth between the orange, yellow, and white in order to get the bright contour markings and highlights from the light source. And then once you've got that done, we are going to be using we're going to use this brush again so you can wash it and dry it. I'm thinking that's looking pretty good. Wash it and dry it and get ready. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to finish the wagon. We'll do the wheels on a separate step, but this will be the base section of the wagon. I'm going to use my medium brush. The colors that I'm going to use are black, white, and red. And I might use a little brown too if I need to, but in my head right now I'm just using black, white, and red. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to be adding a little bit of dimension on the inside of the wagon. So again, it just doesn't look black and static. I'm going to add a little bit of dark gray over here. So if our light source is kind of up and to the left, I feel that we might be able to see a little bit of a lighter color in through here, but back here, I feel that that would stay black. So I'm going to add a little bit of darker gray in through here. And then on the edge of my wagon, I'm going to put a little lip around the top edge of it with a little shadow underneath, and then we'll just clean up the base side panels of it, maybe putting a little bit of highlight down in through here and then a little highlight on the edges of the rim. So I'm going to start on the inside. I'm going to pick up black plus a teeny tiny bit of white paint. So it's mostly black with just a teeny tiny bit of white paint, and I'm going to put just a little bit of this dark gray tone on this area. So this doesn't have to be anything really invasive, but just these little tiny details will make it look a little bit more realistic. If this all just was flat black, like I feel like I want it even a tiny bit lighter, so I just picked up a little bit more white on my brush. Just adding these little nuances of a color shift. Maybe it's a little lighter up top than it is down below. Those little tiny things are going to help to make it look a little bit more realistic. So even if it's not much of a detail, something as subtle as that can help out. And then just making sure I have the rest of it all nice and finished inside there, and that works for me. Now I'm going to pick up a little bit of black. So I picked up black, and I'm also going to pick up water on my brush. So I dipped my brush in water, and I just tap it off on my paper towel. So what this does is it puts water in my bristles, which will allow me to make that black that's on there a little bit more fluid so I can have kind of a cleaner line. So I'm going to come down from here, I would say about a 1/2 inch to an inch, and I'm going to give myself a line going across here. So just kind of riding this right along in through here, something like that. And it doesn't have to be perfect, but just something that will sell the story. I'm going to put more water on my brush right now, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to curve this up, and now I'm going to ride it up in through here. But when I do this one, I'm going to make it more narrow as it goes up towards here. So I'm going to just kind of take my brush, and as I come up here, I'm going to make it closer and closer to the edge of that, of the of the wagon. Boy, I was just struggling for that word there. So this whole thing is kind of the same height around here, and then when I went over on this side, I made it's thicker here and then more narrow up and through here. And I'll re-identify that red in a minute. Now that I've done that, if you need to make it any smoother or straighter, feel free to do so, just kind of going back and forth a little bit to get that a little bit better. I'm thinking that's pretty good, so I'm going to wash and dry my brush, and I'm going to put my edge on here. So this is going to be mostly red, but I'm gonna start with red, and then I'll put a little white highlight on it. So I washed and dried my brush, and I'm going to clean this whole edge up with just red paint. And because I did a base coat that had variations in tones, I had a little bit of brown in there, you'll most likely be able to detect some of that variation even underneath this coat that I'm going to put now. So that's perfect. That's going to just, again, make this side look like it's in, behind. I am going to put a highlight on in a minute, but I'm using this to clean up this edge, and again, just bringing it right up to my pumpkin and making sure that I've brought it up as high as I want to. So that's going to put my second coat on that. And then I'm going to put a second coat down here as well. So again, just using my red at this point to make sure that I have a good coat. If it goes too bright, if you've got red that has good opacity, which means you can't see through that red paint very well, you could certainly use a little bit more brown back in through here on this second coat as well. But for me, mine is pretty transparent or translucent, so I can see right through it. So I still have those variations in tones throughout that. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up red plus white on my brush to give myself a highlight on this edge in through here. So I have red and white about equal parts, and I'm just going to give myself a real loose kind of highlight going across here. And this, of course, you could use to clean up the edge more if you needed to. That's going to be wherever your comfort zone is, and you can make it lighter or darker. I actually think I want mine a little bit lighter, just so I added a bit more white onto my brush. And I, want this to kind of look a little shiny. You could certainly make yours less shiny by putting less lightness up and through there. I'm going to do a similar exercise over here on the left-hand side, but I'm going to wash and dry my brush. And I'm going to start with red paint. Again, just doing my line up in through here to clean up my edge, and just to give myself that second kind of coat, making sure I've got it in the vicinity that I want, and making sure that I've got any little vacant areas colored in. That's perfect. I'm going to do the same thing in through here. So again, this is where I had my, I had grass kind of going in front of the edge of my wagon. So this is where I clean those things up. And this second coat is just going to make it look more smooth and have, again, I wanted it to have a little bit of variation in tones in it, to make it look like it's a little weathered or has some dirt on it or something. You certainly don't need to do yours like that. You could have a nice solid coat of red if you wanted to. So now I'm going to put white paint on my brush, on my dirty brush. So I didn't wash it. I just put white paint on my brush. I'm going to have this side even more highlighted than the back. So I'm just going to really bring a nice bright streak down this edge, And of course, you could certainly use a smaller brush if you want to. This is making me go a little wobbly here. I'm at a difficult angle in through here. There we go. That works out better. And of course you can, let it dry if you need to clean it up any. That looks pretty good. I'm also going to kind of curve this edge in through here. I want this to look like the edge of the wagon is kind of turned, or it's got like these curved edges to it. So just kind of curling that edge. I'm picking up a little bit more red just to get this to blend in. So something like that. And again, the intensity of the brightness is gonna be a visual preference on your part. I'm gonna have a little light line down this edge so you can see the edge, the left from the right. So I didn't wash my brush. I'm just using a little bit of that, whatever remnants I had of the red and the white, just to kind of re-identify or identify that corner. I know that the left side of my wagon would be a little bit lighter, so just adding that little bit of lightness down there makes a difference. I'm going to pick up more white and I'm going to streak it down this corner of the wagon so it looks like the front of the wagon is being illuminated by that, whatever the light source is. And then I'm going to pull this down this right hand side. So while it's still wet, I'm just going to kind of pull it back into the side of the wagon. And you could, to make it smoother, you could certainly add a little bit of liquid medium or a little bit more red on your brush, whatever works for you to get that into the brightness that you want. I think I want a little bit lighter right in through here, and you can keep adding layers until you get it as bright as you want. And then once I've got that on there, I'm just picking up a little bit of white and red paint on my brush. I'm going to do just a quick highlight on the edge of these ones. It'll act as my highlight and cleaning up my edge as I go through the process. And of course you could switch to your smaller brush if that was if that worked out for you. Since I curled this edge, I need to curl this one too. So I'm just going to make that a little rounded corner right in through there. And then I'm just going to bring this as a highlight down this side over here. I think I need to put a little bit more red, so I'm going to pick up a little bit more red because I can see right through my paint. So just another layer in through there will work out for me. And of course, if you can still see through your paint and you need to do another layer, just keep layering it until it works out for you. And I think I'm adding a tiny bit more white right in through here, and then I would just fiddle with it. So I've got my highlights where I want, I've got my shadows where I want, and then I would just kind of sit and fiddle with it until I had any little markings that I felt were necessary to make. And we are going to be using our small brush for the next step. So once you've got this in the way that you want, you can put this medium brush away, take out your small brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're gonna do for the next step is we're gonna paint some wheels. I'm gonna be using my small brush. The colors I'm using are black, white, and red. And what I'm gonna do is I'm going to be creating them in perspective with the wagon itself. So I'm gonna have them coming out about in through here, and then I'm gonna have the bottom one is gonna look way bigger than the one up here because we're seeing them, out of perspective. So the one farther away is going to be much smaller. I'm going to be using my small brush. I'm going to start with gray paint. So what I'm doing is I'm going to take a little bit of black and a little bit of white and just mix it together. I'm just going for a light to medium gray color. I'm going to be using this just as the base for the oval interior part of my wheel. So this is looking pretty good to me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to find myself, I've got mine maybe down about a third of the way down my canvas, or down the wagon. I'm going to just give myself a horizontal line that's maybe, I would say, about an inch wide, or in length, so something like this. And then when I go to do the one down here, I'm going to have it coming out in through here. I'm going to have it a little bit thicker in height, and it's going to come out not quite as far as here, but not like half. It's going to be just a little bit shy of that. So something like this. I want it thicker so it looks like it's closer, and it needs to be in length a little bit longer than that because it's closer to us, but it doesn't need to go past that edge. So something in this vicinity will work. This is going to be the part that, you know, connects it underneath the wagon. Now I'm going to do 2 ovals. So I'm going to take from here and I'm going to give myself 2 slender ovals. So I'm going to do this one somewhere in this vicinity, like this, and it's got to be as high up there as it is down the bottom. So whatever you do up top for height above here, you want to do the same thing down at the bottom. So you can use little measuring tools, like maybe I use my pencil to see how long that is, and then do the same thing up here. So I see I need to bring this up just a little bit because it need to be a little bit taller. So something like that. And then I'm going to do the same thing down below, only my oval down here is going to be much bigger. So in respect to this line here, let's see what I did here. I've got, my oval is about twice as tall as the length of my bar in through here. So I can just kind of do that, and I can say, okay, well, the top is going to be here, and then my bottom is going to be in through here. And now I can make myself another oval, and this is going to be a little bit wider than that one up top. So I'm just using my gray paint. I'm going to give myself an oval type of a shape, a really tall oval. And again, this one's going to be a little bit wider because it is closer, and taller because it is closer. So once I've got these ovals established, I'm going to paint all of my details. And my details are going to be very simplistic. I don't need to do anything fancy for my details. I just want to give the idea that these are in fact little wheels that are holding this wagon, just kind of making sure I've got my oval the way that I want it. It's looking pretty good. And of course I can do little tweaks and stuff after it's done, but what I'm going to do now is I'm going to wash and dry my brush, and I'm going to put a little bit of black paint on my brush. I'm going to give myself a shadow underneath this bar in through here. So just a little bit of black paint. I can bring a shadow down the bottom side of this. I think I'm going to put a little bit as it's entering underneath the wagon too. So just a little bit of black paint there. I'm going to do the same thing on this one. So just a little bit of black paint. And if my gray is still wet, that's awesome because it'll just make it look like it's a blended shadow, which is a more advanced shadow and it works out just as well. So something like that, and just leaving a little bit of that gray at the top so it looks like it's got a bit of a highlight from our light source. Now I'm going to put a black tire on. I'm going to use my black paint. I'm going to put a real slender line on this left-hand side and then a wider line on the right-hand side to, again, indicate that we're seeing this from an angle. We're seeing it almost from the back angle. So I have black paint on my brush. I'm going to do a real narrow line on the left side. And then as I come around the right side, I'm going to widen it. And that's going to be the back side of my tire. This is going to be the side that the viewer is looking at or can see the most of. So something like that is going to give me that tire maybe a little bit wider, just so it gives me a little bit better perspective here. So you can bring it closer to the wagon if you want to, but if that's the direction you make it wider on this top one, then that's what you do on the bottom one too if you need to make it wider. So that looks pretty good. I'm going to do the same thing on the bottom wagon wheel. Again, everything on this bottom one is going to be bigger. So on the left-hand side, as I do this narrow pass, I'm pushing my brush just a little bit more, so it's just a little bit wider than the one on top. And you know, I'm not going for photorealism here, so if my line isn't perfectly wide, I'm all right with that. And then as I come up this right-hand side, I'm going to be almost twice as wide as that one up there. So I'm going to bring it over this right-hand side, and I'm definitely going to have to make more than one pass to get it as wide as I want it. So that's one pass, and you can make it pretty darn wide. I'm going to make this, bring it closer to my my wagon, and then I might even bring it to the left a little bit more too, because I really want this back one to look pretty darn wide. I think I'm going to bring it closer to my wagon in a second here, but this is looking pretty good. We got this, and I'm curving it a little bit, obviously, because that's I want my wheel to look round. So that curve in it is going to help to give that implication. So now that I've got that done, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up a little bit of white paint on my dirty brush, and I'm going to give myself a little highlight at the top of this tire. So white and black is going to give me a little bit of a gray color just at the top of this tire, which is going to give me a little bit of the illusion of a highlight on that side. I don't need to do much. I just want to give it a little bit of a bit of a highlight. I'm going to wash and dry my brush, and I'm going to put red paint on my brush. I'm going to have a little red hubcap of sorts. So I'm going to go directly from this bar in through here and just directly straight across into the middle of this oval, make myself a little red circular mark. Do the same thing over here, directly over from here, give myself a little red circular mark that is of course bigger than the one on the other tire. And then once I've got that, I think I need a little bit more red on my brush to get that to cover a little bit better. Yeah, there we go. Now I'm going to wash and dry my brush, and I'm going to put a little white on my brush, give myself a little highlight and detail in these inner rims of sorts. So I just put a little bit of white. I'm going to just go for a little bit of a highlight on the inside of these rims, something like this, and maybe a little bit up in through here. So I'm just kind of giving myself a little bit of detail or of like shininess on the inside of these tires. You could do spokes, you could do all kinds of fun detail. I'm just looking to give it a little bit of something that's making it not look flat. So I'm adding this bit of a highlight, which will help the viewer understand that maybe it's got a shiny surface to it, maybe it's got a little contour to it. So you can really, maybe I pick up a little bit of a little bit more white to give myself maybe a little kind of detailed edge around here. But whatever you do on one, you'll want to carry that over on the other one. So I just put a little bit more white there. I'm going to put a little highlight on my little hub cap in through here, and then I would just let it dry and see once it dries if I want to do any other little details or clean up any lines. I can certainly do that. You could even I'm going to wash and dry my brush. You could even pull in a couple pieces of grass. So I just washed my brush. If you have like the bottom of the tire that you want to be in behind the grass, you can just pull, I picked up yellow, you can pull up a couple of pieces at the bottom of those tires, and that's going to make it look like it's just either resting or driving right through that grass. So those are cute little details that you can use to disguise stuff or to give it just that little added extra bit of a finished look to it. And then we're going to be using this same small brush for the next step. So once you've got this done, you can wash and dry your small brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to paint the base coat for our boy and his shadow and the handle. I'm going to use my small brush. The colors I'm going to use are brown and black. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to make a very simplistic silhouette of the young person pulling this big, huge, heavy wagon. And then we're going to do a handle coming from the young person to the wagon. And we'll also do a shadow on the ground. I'm going to start with brown paint. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my little person in play. I'm going to find the corner of my wagon here. I'm going to go to the left of that, I would say about 1/2 inch to 1 inch, and then up just a little bit, so somewhere in this vicinity. I'm giving myself a little horizontal line that's about 1/4 to 1/2 inch wide. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to give myself a vertical line going up to about where I feel the top of my little person is going to go. This is about 3 inches, somewhere in through there. And you could certainly have yours taller or shorter, whatever you want works for me. I just did it in perspective based on what a small person's height would be if it was standing right next to this the front of the wagon. So I made it, I have my vanishing point over here for those of you who know what a vanishing point is, but that's how he got to be as small as he is, or the size that he is. So now that I've got my vertical line in through there, I'm just gonna build my boy from here. It's gonna be kind of leaned over a little bit. I'm gonna have the bottom of his shirt is going to be somewhere, I would say, maybe somewhere right around here. So it's a little bit lower than the halfway point of this line. It's going to be the bottom of his shirt. I'm going to have the head is going to be in this area in through here. I'm going to have it on kind of the left side of my line, or have the right side of my line be the right side of the head in through here, so I can have him kind of looking like he's leaning over. I'm going to do a rectangle type of shape for the torso, making it a little bit wider on the left-hand side of this line. So something like that. The shirt is gonna, or the jacket is gonna, or the sweatshirt is gonna pop out a little bit more over on the left-hand side than it does on the right-hand side of that line. And this again is just the base coat, so you don't have to worry about any fancy brush strokes. I'm gonna go ahead and put some legs on here. My left leg is going to be attached to this vertical line that we did in through here. I'm going to have it just kind of straight down like this. It's going to come almost to the edge of the jacket in through there. And then, as I like to build my clothing, I do like to have organic type of lines, so I don't do it super straight. Maybe it's bumped out a little bit more up there, then tapers in, and then maybe comes out a little bit more down at the foot. But you can certainly build yours however you want. On the right hand side, I'm going to have this leg is going to kind of kick out, so I'm going to split my line just about halfway down the left leg, and then just kind of kick it out to the right hand side. This is going to be a little foot kind of coming down in through here, and then I'm going to have the other side of the pants in through here, and just a little kick out. I don't need much, just the implication that he's walking. And then over on this side, this is going to be where his arm kind of comes out and is holding the wagon handle. So I'm just going to kind of kick this out a little bit in through here, making sure that I've got enough width on this arm to make it make sense, and he'll be holding on to it somewhere in through here. And of course you can make your arm wider or more narrow. Just, I know that I've got my shirt or my jacket coming down to about here, and the waist would be maybe somewhere in through here. So this looks like a pretty good length if it's behind him. And then on the left hand side, I'm going to have him kind of holding himself or weighting himself down on this left hand side, just kind of leaning just a little bit. So it looks like he's really giving a good effort to pull this wagon where it needs to go, or where he wants to pull it to, making a good thick sleeve in through there, and then maybe just the little hand coming out the bottom of the jacket or the sweatshirt or whatever you want to call this. That's looking pretty good. So I'm going to let that sit for a minute. Just make sure I got my foot on here the way that I want to. That looks pretty good. And now I'm going to do the handle of the wagon. So I've got it coming from his hand to the wagon, and if this is the width of my wagon, my handle is going to be about halfway, and then it's going to be down a little bit. So whatever the angle is from that point to the hand, that's going to be the angle of your handle. So somewhere in through here, I'm going to just give myself my diagonal type of a line, and then I will make it wider as it is nearing the wagon. So I'm just going to make it a little bit wider as it comes towards the wagon, something like this. So that'll give you the perspective on it. It'll make it look like it's getting closer and closer to the viewer. We've got that in through there. That's looking pretty good. And of course you can fiddle with it all you want. And then I'm going to put a shadow under him. So I'm going to wash and dry my brush, and I'm going to pick up a little bit of black paint with water on my brush. So black and water. I'm going to have his shadow is going to come back diagonally from this foot in through here, and I'm going to have it kind of coming back behind my wagon. So I'm just kind of bringing this back in through here. I'm going to show a little bit of a shadow from his body, and then maybe his arm kind of coming out like this. And these are just the little details that, again, like we did on the inside of the wagon, that add that extra bit of special detail to the painting. This foot I feel is off the ground, so I would start this shadow a little bit away from it. So just a little bit of a shadow in through there. It's not a big detail, but it can really add a lot to the painting. And then we're going to be using this same brush for the next step. So once you've got this done, oh, and actually, now that we're doing shadow, maybe we could, if you felt that you wanted a little shadow behind your wheels, you could do that as well. So if you felt that there was, you know, you put a shadow behind that, you should put a shadow behind your wheels or anything like that, you could certainly do that. And then we're going to use this same small brush for the next step. So once you've got that done, you could wash and dry this small brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to finish our boy. I'm going to be using my small brush. The colors I'm using are black, blue, brown, and white. Oh, and yellow as well. Of course, you could use any colors you want. He could have a red jacket if you want. You can make yours, or black hair. You can make anything that you want. What I'm going to do is I'm going to have him wearing blue pants and a brownish type of sweatshirt, maybe with some gray sleeves and a gray hoodie, and then I'm just gonna have him having some brown hair. I may clean up this little handle as well, because I feel like it looks a little unfinished. So I'm gonna start with his pants. I'm putting a little bit of blue paint on my brush. Again, you could make yours into any color scheme that you want. I just, you know, tend to do a lot of blue jeans in my paintings. Not quite sure why, maybe because I wear blue jeans, but I'm just gonna put a layer of blue on top of the brown, which really provides a nice kind of a rustic, not rustic, but, you know, kind of weathered denim look to it. I'm going to now put a tiny bit of, I wipe my brush off on my paper towel. I'm picking up a little bit of black paint to put on the bottom of this shoe, just to give a little bit of maybe a shadowy look at the bottom of that shoe. Maybe we'll put a little shoe right in through here too. I'm also going to put a little bit of a shadow underneath the shirt on the butt in through here, just to give a little bit of maybe shadow on this back leg. I'm going to wash and dry my brush, and I'm going to put a tiny bit of blue and white on my brush. I mean, just a itty bitty bit on the tip of my brush. I'm even going to kind of dab it off on my paper towel, just to put a little highlight down this left side of the pants to give a little bit more form to them. Again, hardly anything, just a little tiny bit down this left-hand side, so we can see that there's a little bit of light over there. Now I'm going to wash and dry my brush. I'm going to put a tiny bit of black paint on my brush, because I want this, I want the clothing here to look like there's a little bit of a hood. So I took a little bit of black paint and I'm outlining the bottom part of the hood. I'm also going to use this black paint to give myself a little shadow underneath this sleeve of this arm. So I'm pulling it into the back a little bit, just giving me a little bit of shadow underneath there, as well as on this right hand side, I'm going to do a little bit underneath the cuff of the sleeve right in through here, and I'll put a little bit down on the back of the kid's neck in through here. I'm going to wipe my brush off. I'm picking up some brown paint to put a second coat of brown paint on the back of the shirt in through here, as well as on the sleeve and the sleeve over here. So my brown is just giving me a second coat. Now I'm picking up brown with a touch of white on my brush, so brown and white. This is where I'm going to give a little bit of kind of a lighter look to these sleeves and the hood. So this is brown and white. And I'm going to do the same color combination and about equal parts of both. I'm going to do this on this back arm in through here. So this is kind of overlapping the back a little bit, which is going to show that this arm is, you know, behind him, pulling the wagon like this. I'm going to also put a little bit of this on the hood area to give a little bit of shape to it, so something like that. And now I'm going to put a little bit of white on my brush to give myself a little highlight on this shoulder in through here. I'm going to also put a little bit of a highlight on the hood part in through here, just to give it a little bit something extra, a little bit on the hand or the top of the sleeve in through there. Now I'm going to wash my brush and I'm going to put a little bit of the yellow color on it. I'm going to give him just a little kind of a golden highlight on his hair. Now I'm picking up brown and I'm going to do a second little layer on the hair. And now I'm picking up a touch of white to do a little highlight on the crest of the head in through here. So that just gives me a little kind of lighter brown tone to his hair. Of course, you could make that into any color hair that you want. I think actually I'm picking up a little bit of brown. I want to bump up this edge to the sweatshirt right in through here, so it looks like it's kind of coming up around the neck a little bit. So those are little kind of tweaks that I would do once I've got everything in place. If I want that to look like it's up a little bit more, I can certainly pull it up past that shoulder line and it looks a little bit like it's got more substance to it. And now I'm going to just kind of give myself a little highlight on here. I just picked up a little bit of white on my dirty brush and I'm just going to pull this back. So I have a little bit of a highlight. Now I'm picking up brown to make sure that I have it fully painted. And then I would let it dry and see if there's any little fiddles that I want to do to make it any better. And then I will, I'll be using this same brush for the next step. So once you've got this step done, you can wash and dry your small brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so we are on to the final step. This is the final step of every painting, which is to sign it. So I typically sign mine in the bottom left or the bottom right. I'm gonna be using my small brush and black paint. I'm gonna be signing this in the bottom left corner. You could certainly sign yours wherever you'd like. I like to use my initials, but you could use your first name, you could use the date, a symbol, whatever you want for your identifying mark is great. You can do whatever you'd like because it's your painting and you get to sign it however you'd like. And that's going to conclude this painting. I hope you enjoyed the process. I hope you painted yourself a really cute autumn harvest type of painting, and I look forward to painting and sipping with you again sometime.